International.
The war in Iran. Take it to the bank. How America and Israel built vast military targeting machines.
The display of American and Israeli firepower in Iran has been more fast-paced and overwhelming than America showed off in either of the first two Persian Gulf wars. The two allies are thought to have conducted more offensive sorties on February 28th than America managed on the first day of serious fighting, with much larger deployed forces, in either 1991 or 2003, around 1,300 in each. 5 days later, Pete Hegseth, America's Secretary of War, boasted that Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003. America and Israel can muster high volumes of strike sorties and missile launches because they can identify targets more precisely and more quickly than ever before possible. And they are able to produce targets with such pace, scope and precision because of their greatly increased use of software, including, to a limited extent thus far, artificial intelligence. Both countries' armed forces now generate and hit targets at an industrial scale. The selection of targets has been under intense scrutiny since the early hours of the war. On February 28th, 175 people, most of them children, were killed after a girls' school in Minab in southern Iran was hit by what was probably an American Tomahawk cruise missile. On March 11th, the New York Times reported the Pentagon had determined the strike was the result of a targeting mistake as part of an attack on a nearby naval base. Mr. Hegseth has risked a perception of callous disregard for civilian lives by emphasizing repeatedly that he wants to prioritize lethality in the armed forces over tepid legality, and by gutting the budget for civilian harm assessments inside the Pentagon. Almost 1,800 people have been killed in Iran so far, most of them civilians, according to HRANA, a human rights monitor in Washington. America's and Israel's modernized targeting systems are far better at locating targets and at minimizing civilian casualties per strike than what came before them. In America, the industrial process for Iran's strikes is run by humans in Tampa, Florida, headquarters of Central Command, or CENTCOM, which is responsible for the Pentagon's operations in the Middle East. A commander there generates options for various scenarios, such as bombing Iranian nuclear sites or toppling the regime. His J2, or Intelligence Directorate, produces a database of thousands of possible targets, cobbled together from satellite images, signals intelligence, and other sources. The database includes no-strike lists of schools, hospitals, and the like. A weaponeer decides which munitions are needed for which targets, such as bunker busters for buried sites or GPS-guided Joint Direct Attack munitions, known as JDAMs for buildings. Lawyers review targets, though their role is limited. A lawyer reviewing targets doesn't say, "You can't do that," says a former American commander. He says, "You can do that, but here are the consequences." At the end of the day, the ultimate lawyer is the commander. The command's J5, Strategy and Plans Directorate, assembles all this into a coherent war plan and passes it to the J3, Operations, which ultimately breaks the plan down into air tasking orders that typically look 2 days ahead. Software has long been used to help with this. It estimates the probability of destroying the target given its location and construction, and the likely harm to civilians by simulating the footprint of blast, heat, and fragmentation. This can be overlaid on maps as a jagged-edged image, sometimes called a splat. But in recent years, the technology has taken a leap in scope and sophistication. America's armed forces, including CENTCOM and those of NATO, now use the MAVEN smart system, built largely by Palantir, an American firm, to soup up the whole process. MAVEN is known as a decision support tool. It takes information from open sources, such as social media feeds, and classified sources, such as satellites, fusing all of it together. If an Iranian mentions on Telegram, the preferred app for such chatter in Iran, that they saw a missile launcher driven past their house, MAVEN can correlate that snippet with data from radio frequency satellites that detect the electronic emissions from Iranian military radios. MAVEN can then generate targets, work out which weapon is best placed to strike each one, and assess the damage done afterwards. MAVEN also serves as a digital twin of the real world, writes Arnell David, the NATO officer in charge of the programme, allowing commanders to simulate how a particular decision might play out. The aim, he says, is to turn military command into a machine-aided predictive science. All this means that data can be turned into targets at a far faster pace. Joe O'Callaghan, a retired colonel who led the development of MAVEN at the U.S. Army's 18th Airborne Corps, said on a recent podcast that one classified study had shown how Palantir's system allowed military staff to plan an operation on the scale of the Iraq War with 1/10 of the manpower. That will have since improved, he added. MAVEN has been employed in aid of Ukraine from 2022. What would previously have taken dozens of people tens of hours, says a former NATO general involved with MAVEN, that could be boiled down to 2 minutes. A European general describes what he has witnessed as alchemy. We're moving from 10 targets a day to 300, he says. The aspiration is 3,000 a day. Israel uses different software, but has also industrialized the process, as one officer puts it. American planners were astonished when, in preparing for the war, their Israeli counterparts arrived with a target bank of thousands of Iranian targets and munitions needed for each. The headquarters and homes of Iranian leaders, military and militia bases, missile launchers and factories, civilian infrastructure, and more. Israel has given more autonomy to decision support systems to generate targets than I would ever have been given, says the European general. Israel's process has its roots in the Yom Kippur War of 1973, when the country's planes were mauled by Soviet-made air defences. That prompted the Israeli Air Force to collect and fuse data on enemy surface-to-air missiles, or SAMs, systematically, which contributed to a decisive victory against Syria in 1982. Then, in a war with Hezbollah in Lebanon in 2006, Israel encountered a new issue. As the war dragged on for 34 days, Israeli generals complained, "The bank has run out of targets." Amos Yadlin, then commander of military intelligence, adapted the methods used against SAMs and expanded them to all potential targets. The Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, eventually had a bound copy of Hamas targets at the ready. Whenever a rocket was launched from Gaza, he could choose a target for retaliation within minutes. All of this might seem like a black box. Commanders argue that the target banks created by MAVEN and other tools, which have been tested for almost a decade, are generally reliable. They apply a confidence level to each target, depending on the underlying data. They also tend to be better than a harried human analyst might be at identifying civilian objects, says an officer. In both the American and Israeli armed forces, Humans approve each target outside extreme circumstances such as air defence systems, which are tasked with engaging a large number of incoming projectiles. But some insiders acknowledge that the increasing scale and tempo of strikes has created incentives to give computers greater latitude in actually firing on the targets that they have generated. Fears about autonomous strikes are at the heart of a dispute between Anthropic, developer of Claude, an AI model, and the Pentagon, though that remains a hypothetical concern for now. Claude is used to some extent inside Maven, but not for geospatial tasks like identifying objects. In NATO, some countries are worried about the loss of human control, says one person involved with the technology. We're moving at a pace of change I wouldn't even have understood 4 years ago. In many cases, the problem with computer-aided target banks is less to do with computers and more to do with the humans using them. AI can make a good intelligence officer better and help make sure there's less collateral damage, says an Israeli source. But if the intelligence officer is just trying to come up with more targets and cares less about who gets hurt, AI will help generate those targets. Israel's strikes on Gaza revealed another problem with maintaining sprawling target banks. When civilians were killed in strikes, we would go back and check our information, says one analyst. Often it was because Hamas had used that building in the past, but moved on, and families had moved in. The IDF periodically revalidated its targets, but not often enough. A failure to revalidate targets may have been the problem with the strike on the girls' school in Minab, a site which an official told the New York Times used to be part of the nearby naval base. As humans get swamped by ever more computer-generated targets, enabling far more strikes per day, minimizing the risks of such catastrophes will be an increasing challenge. In America, perhaps the biggest challenge comes from the top. Mr. Hegseth has denigrated the laws of war, fired military lawyers, and loosened rules of engagement. He has also slashed the number of Pentagon personnel who work on the protection of civilians by 90%, says one official. The civilian harm team that works within CENTCOM is at 1/3 of its pre-Hegseth staffing. Personnel dealing with planning and those inside strike cells have suffered the greatest attrition. Such staffers can help understand how changes on the ground in Iran can render targets like the school in Minab out of date. The more we do on the planning side, says the official, the less we have to worry about Minabs. On March 8th, CENTCOM said Iranians should stay home to avoid getting killed, and accused Iran's leaders of putting civilians in harm's way by deploying weapons in built-up areas. The regime, CENTCOM said, blatantly disregards the safety of innocent people.
International.
The Telegram. India should fear a world in chaos. Not long ago, India was cocky about handling an unpredictable America. No longer.
By rights, this should be a told-you-so moment for the high priests of Indian foreign policy. The strongest countries on earth are bent on dominating the rest. Lesser nations are increasingly cowed. No law or international treaty seems able to constrain the exercise of raw power. In their book-lined Delhi studies and tree-shaded official residences, the Brahmins of Indian statecraft saw this coming. India has been braced for a messier world for a long time, and sometimes seemed to welcome it. Since Donald Trump was first elected, and again as he returned to office last year, Indian officials mocked Western allies for lamenting his transactional ways and America-first rhetoric. As Indians put it, Mr. Trump represented the true and eternal face of America, with the mask off. For good measure, India declined to condemn its long-time ally, Russia, as a pariah for invading Ukraine in 2022. Great powers have always been ruthless, Indian grandees sighed to visitors, and the so-called liberal rules-based order was a sham. Western democracies may mourn the old world that they once dominated, but India had deals to cut. India's Foreign Minister, Subramanyam Jaishankar, is still promoting this message. News of the war in Iran and the Gulf dominated the Raisina Dialogue, a government-backed conference held in Delhi from March 5th to 7th. But on the main stage, Mr. Jaishankar sounded calm about a move from global order to disorder. After all, he argued, the post-1945 international system was an order by the West, for the West, from the West. Those rules lasted 70 years, or a mere 1% of Indian history. If it is ending, that is unsurprising and may create opportunities for India and the global south, he averred. Life moves on. Alas, Delhi's foreign policy and security establishment does not buy Mr. Jaishankar's sang-froid. Over many cups of excellent Darjeeling and chai, this columnist spoke to retired and serving Indian and foreign diplomats, army officers, business executives and scholars. The foreign minister is whistling to keep up our courage, but this is a time of humiliation, said one Indian bigwig. With the Iran conflict preventing ships from safely using the Strait of Hormuz and liquefied natural gas exports suspended from such major suppliers as Qatar, India faces an energy crunch if the war does not end soon. The Trump administration announced during the Raisina Dialogue that it was issuing a waiver authorizing India to buy Russian oil affected by sanctions. Rather than inspiring gratitude, American talk of India being allowed to buy Russian oil for 30 days provoked grumbles about India being handed a chit by its master. The mood at the talking shop was not helped when America's Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau, told his audience that we are not going to make the same mistakes with India that we made with China 20 years ago in terms of saying we are going to let you develop all these markets and then the next thing we know, you are beating us in a lot of commercial things. Several people expressed angst about the sinking by an American submarine of an Iranian warship in international waters near Sri Lanka. The attack by torpedo, which Mr. Trump later called more fun than capturing Iran's frigate, was seen as an insult to India, which had just hosted the Iranian ship at a naval exercise. That angst turned into anger that the government of Narendra Modi did not condemn the sinking and has been generally rather silent about the war in Iran. The explanation is fear of Mr. Trump. Relations with America were awful last year after what an insider calls the government's arrogance and swagger when Mr. Trump returned to power. In 2025, Mr. Trump picked a trade war with India, and after a brief India-Pakistan clash, seemed to side with Pakistan. His eagerness to improve ties with China undercut Indian hopes of being America's valued hedge against China. Yet among Delhi elites, there is a consensus that India needs closer ties with America, an unrivaled source of investment, technology, and high-quality defence kit. Indian officials talk up their skill at maintaining close ties with disparate powers, from America and Russia to Israel and the Gulf Arab monarchies. Despite booming trade with the Gulf and ever closer ties with Israeli intelligence and defence technology firms, India has maintained reasonably cordial links with Iran, reflecting a shared antipathy to Pakistan and India's need for a land route to Afghanistan. But senior figures in Delhi questioned whether India's balancing act offers it autonomy, as Mr. Jaishankar and other cheerleaders claim. Insiders suggest that the country is instead dangerously dependent on lots of different places at once. An extended war in Iran imperils not just trade with the Gulf, but also 9.5 million Indians who live and work in the United Arab Emirates and other Arab states, sending huge amounts home in remittances. A long Middle Eastern energy blockade would prompt China to buy more Russian oil. If that deepens Russia's dependency on China, that is a threat to India, which simultaneously relies on Russia as an important, though diminishing, defence supplier and has tense relations with China, including fatal border clashes in recent years. A lengthy Iran war could give China more leverage over India in another way too. If India needs greater energy independence, a big push on renewables will be needed. Only China offers the solar panels, windmills and batteries needed at scale and at low cost. Dependency be damned. In short, a world in turmoil is terrible for India. That is to the country's credit. It has plans to become a prosperous, advanced economy that chaos would derail. For reasons of pride and propaganda, though, Indian leaders cannot admit this aloud.
Business.
Artificial Intelligence Part 1. Caps out, knives out. Sam Altman, Dario Amodei and Elon Musk are fighting dirty for the biggest prize in business.
If there has been a common narrative around artificial intelligence this year, it is that advances in the technology are shaking up the vast and hitherto cosy world of software. In order to keep this blitzkrieg going, the labs at the forefront of AI need to raise enormous amounts of money. That has set the stage for 3 colossal initial public offerings, or IPOs, in a single year. Those of OpenAI, led by Sam Altman, Anthropic, under Dario Amodei, and SpaceX, run by Elon Musk, which has merged with xAI, his model maker. Adding to the frisson, the trio hate each other. All 3 are aiming for the stratosphere. OpenAI, which was recently valued at $840 billion, is said to be looking for a price tag of $1 trillion, or 40 times its current annualized revenue. Anthropic, last valued at $380 billion, a multiple of around 20 times its annualized sales, will probably be priced at upwards of $500 billion. Most ambitious of all is SpaceX, which was valued at $1.25 trillion when it merged with xAI and is reportedly seeking to list at $1.5 trillion. That would put it squarely among the world's 10 most valuable listed firms and could even make Mr. Musk history's first trillionaire. Just one IPO of such size would strain markets. Tomasz Tunguz, a venture capitalist, points out that if each firm were to offer 15% of its shares to the public, as is typical, the combined sum raised will be roughly equivalent to the total from all IPOs in America over the past decade. That helps explain the eagerness of each boss to avoid being last to market. Ego, too, plays a role, particularly as the model-making race has tightened. To understand the clash between the trio, it helps to consider the personalities. These can be summed up as the mercenary Mr. Altman, the missionary Mr. Amodei, and the messianic Mr. Musk. Start with Mr. Altman. Some admire him for getting the AI race going with the launch of ChatGPT in 2022 and for outmanoeuvring Anthropic and xAI in raising money ever since. But he is also slyly opportunistic. That was evident during a recent bust-up between Anthropic and the Trump administration over guardrails on the Pentagon's use of its technology, which led to the lab being declared a supply chain risk, a designation the model makers sued to have removed on March 9th, and which could otherwise threaten its IPO. In contrast to Mr. Musk, who openly trash-talks misanthropic, Mr. Altman sought to portray himself as a bridge builder between Mr. Amodei's lab and the Trump administration. Yet OpenAI, like xAI, swooped in to win classified defense contracts at Anthropic's expense. Mr. Amodei, who left OpenAI to co-found Anthropic in 2021, has a safety-first ethos and contrasts Anthropic's principled approach with its rivals' race for growth. Yet he is no pushover. In an internal memo written in the heat of the Pentagon furore, for which he later told The Economist he apologised, Mr. Amodei attacked Mr. Altman as mendacious and a suck-up to Mr. Trump. Anthropic's didactic stance is also useful marketing. Claude, its chatbot, has gained in popularity since the Pentagon spat. The lab's response to pressure has been hailed even by staff at OpenAI. Mr. Musk, who helped set up OpenAI in 2015, is more hostile still towards Mr. Altman. In his telling, OpenAI, which has shed its non-profit status, has forsaken its mission to develop AI in a way that would benefit all humanity. As a result, Mr. Musk wants his original $38 million donation back, plus some. He is suing OpenAI and Microsoft, its biggest backer, for as much as $134 billion. The case will go to trial next month. If he succeeds, he will bankrupt OpenAI and ruin Mr. Altman. Mr. Musk, it seems, will not trust anyone but himself with control over the technology. The entrepreneur has a godlike ambition to extend the light of consciousness to the stars. He plans to use SpaceX's rockets to send fleets of data centers into orbit, better to harness the power of the sun. In the realm of mortals, however, there is still the pesky matter of money. Last year, xAI generated perhaps $500 million in revenue, putting it far behind the other two labs. X, the social media platform it is attached to, brought in another $3 billion or so. One of its main sources of revenue is work for the American government, with which Mr. Musk has close ties. Its Pentagon contract is worth up to $200 million, yet several departments are said to have complained that Grok, its chatbot, is unreliable. xAI's lack of scale is one reason Mr. Musk has bolted it onto SpaceX, which was already flourishing. Last year, it reportedly made an operating profit before depreciation and amortization of $8 billion from sales of $15 billion to $16 billion. OpenAI, which drew in a reported $13 billion of revenue last year, is larger than both xAI and Anthropic. It also has the broadest business model. It is aiming for $30 billion of sales this year, half of which it expects to come from consumer subscriptions and ads in ChatGPT, which has over 900 million weekly users, 50 million of whom pay through a variety of pricing tiers. The rest will come from business users and those who access OpenAI's models directly. But Anthropic, which probably made $4 billion to $5 billion in revenue last year, is quickly catching up. It has been more focused than OpenAI on business customers and has success in particular with its Claude Code tool for software engineers. By the end of February, OpenAI had reached an annualized revenue of $25 billion, up by a fifth from the end of last year. Anthropic's figure, at $19 billion, more than doubled over the same period. That may explain why Mr. Altman was so eager to muscle in on Anthropic's government contracts, as well as OpenAI's recent focus on expanding its offerings for businesses. Customers say that Codex, its alternative to Claude Code, is catching up in performance. Fierce rivalry for customers will add pressure on prices at a time when the labs are investing huge sums in data centers to meet growing demand and train new models. None is close to breaking even. OpenAI, which concluded a $110 billion private fundraising round last month, has forecast that it will invest $660 billion in infrastructure by 2030, and will not start generating free cash flow until then. Even SpaceX, which makes money from launching rockets and selling satellite internet, needs far more cash than it can generate. Moffett-Nathanson, a firm of analysts, points out that its plan to send 1 million data center satellites into space will require a staggering amount of external financing. All three, therefore, have little choice but to turn to public markets if they are to stay in the AI race. Whether their IPOs are a success or not will depend on how many investors are willing to overlook the long and uncertain path to generating a profit from the technology. It will not help that there is another alternative on offer that is already publicly traded: Alphabet, owner of Google. Its Gemini model goes from strength to strength. The search giant is a cash machine, generating a net profit of $130 billion last year, allowing it to fund its AI investments from its own pocket. And its $3.7 trillion market value is a more reasonable 9 times revenue. Sundar Pichai, its boss, can afford to remain above the fray.
Business.
Artificial Intelligence, Part 2. Festive Freebies. China's AI giants have been spending big to lure in users.
It is customary in China to give gifts during the Lunar New Year. Throughout the most recent festivities, which ended on March 3rd, the country's artificial intelligence industry enthusiastically embraced the tradition. Over the preceding month, companies handed out coupons worth a generous 8 billion yuan, or $1.2 billion, to anyone willing to download and use their applications, the latest versions of which boast agentic capabilities that allow bots to perform tasks such as ordering a meal with just a few spoken instructions. Locally, this subsidy spectacle has been dubbed the Hongbao Wars, in reference to the red envelopes of cash typically handed out over the new year. Already, most Chinese AI companies were making their models available at no charge. Now they are paying consumers to use their services. How long can the industry's ferocious rivalry last? Chinese AI firms have been investing heavily to develop and promote their agentic services. In mid-February, ahead of the celebrations, Alibaba, an e-commerce giant, and ByteDance, which controls TikTok and its local sister app Douyin, both launched upgrades to their chatbots that allow them to perform various tasks on behalf of users. More than 100 million drinks were sold via Quen, Alibaba's chatbot, during the Lunar New Year period. Doubao, ByteDance chatbot, fielded almost 2 billion queries over a few hours on February 16th during a televised gala that was sponsored by the company. For China's internet giants, agentic chatbots provide a way to direct users to other services from which they make money, such as e-commerce. Some dream of creating an AI-powered super app that can facilitate nearly all of a user's digital transactions. Alibaba, ByteDance and Tencent, another Chinese internet superstar which offers the Yuanbao chatbot, seem best positioned. Baidu, China's equivalent of Google and creator of the Ernie chatbot, is falling behind. Industry insiders reckon that smaller AI companies without vast consumer internet businesses will probably not survive. Even DeepSeek, an AI lab that shocked the world early last year with a model that could compete with the best foreign ones, has seen its share of users decline, though it helps to power Yuanbao and could regain momentum with a powerful new model that is expected to be unveiled soon. Consumers have undoubtedly benefited from China's furious AI rivalry, but not everybody is happy. Shareholders in China's internet giants are still waiting for evidence that the investment binge will yield a return. Since the start of the Hongbao Wars, the share price of Alibaba, which probably offered the most lavish subsidies, has fallen by roughly 30%. At the same time, there are signs that efforts to better monetize the technology are causing grumbling among China's top AI brains. On March 4th, Ling Juanyong, the chief engineer behind Quen, unexpectedly quit Alibaba. Some in the industry speculate that increased commercial pressure may have frustrated him. Then there are China's regulators. They have recently expressed displeasure with the subsidy war currently raging in the food delivery business and are probably just as unexcited about the battle for users in the AI industry. Chinese officials tend to look askance at consumer internet services and would much rather companies invest in supporting national efforts in areas such as chip making. Next Lunar New Year, Chinese consumers should not count on more digital red envelopes.
Business.
Healthcare. Move fast and heal things. A new wave of disruptors takes on America's broken medical system.
Silicon Valley has long salivated at the prospect of disrupting America's medical system. The country spends some $5 trillion a year on healthcare, about a fifth of its GDP, and twice as much per person as its rich world peers. Treatment is world-class, but expensive. A third of adults say they have skipped or delayed care in the past year because of cost. Middlemen make the system complex and opaque. Yet American healthcare has, in the past, proved resistant to treatment from disruptors. In 2008, Google, a search colossus, launched a platform to allow people to store and manage their health information in one place, but shut it down in 2011 after it failed to gain custom. IBM, a computing giant, spent billions of dollars over several years on Watson Health, an early artificial intelligence system to help doctors make better diagnoses, before selling the business in 2022 for far less than what it had invested. Haven, a collaboration between Amazon, an e-commerce giant, J.P. Morgan Chase, a bank, and Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's investment firm, was established in 2018 with a view to digitizing the process of accessing healthcare for their employees and using their combined clout to bypass intermediaries. It folded within 3 years. Now, however, a renewed push is underway to shake up the healthcare business. After a post-pandemic slump, digital health startups in America attracted $14 billion of venture capital or VC funding in 2025, up by 35% from 2024. Amid soaring prices and dwindling trust in the healthcare industry, patients are becoming more open to new ways of getting the care they need. Advances in AI are improving access to medical information. And regulators are becoming friendlier to newcomers. The transformation of American healthcare could soon gain momentum. In recent years, costs have become even more staggering. Most Americans under 65 rely on private insurance. Those over 65 are largely covered by Medicare, the public health insurer. Employer-sponsored coverage is the dominant model. According to KFF, a non-profit research group, annual premiums for family coverage have risen by 50% since 2015, from $17,700 to $27,000 last year, well above the rate of inflation. Workers typically contribute around a quarter. As the cost of healthcare has gone up, so have expectations. At the same time, Americans' confidence in their medical system has fallen. Trust in doctors, which surged at the start of the pandemic, has since dropped to its lowest level in decades, according to Gallup, a pollster. Partly that reflects the spread of misinformation on public health matters, such as vaccines. But people are also increasingly craving agency over their health, says Vijay Pandey of VZVC, a VC firm. Startups are harnessing technology to give patients more control. Virtual clinics, such as Hims and Hers and Roe, which initially sold treatments for hair loss and erectile dysfunction, now offer weight loss drugs and other prescriptions. Established drug makers are responding by selling some medicines through their own websites to consumers willing to pay directly. Newcomers are also piling into the burgeoning market for preventative medicine. Venture-backed firms like Prenuvo and Function Health sell full-body MRI scans and extensive blood tests directly to patients for between $1,000 and $4,500. These services promise the early detection of, say, cancers or autoimmune disorders. For an annual subscription, users can get tested periodically to spot any changes in health measures. Primary care is also facing disruption. Companies such as Sesame and One Medical, which was acquired in 2023 by Amazon, allow users to book virtual or in-person appointments with a physician, paying per visit or through a subscription. Some hope to go further. In October, General Catalyst, a VC firm, completed its purchase of Summer Health, which operates a chain of hospitals and health centers in Ohio, and offers its own insurance plans. Darrell Toll, who oversees the business for General Catalyst, says that to change how care is delivered, technology must run seamlessly through an entire health system, from choosing insurance to receiving treatment and paying bills. General Catalyst is working to embed digital tools across the entirety of Summer Health. Its aim is also cultural. Mr. Toll argues that healthcare has long followed a paternalistic approach, in which doctors develop their own language and control decision-making. That hierarchy looks outdated in a world in which patients can more easily access information. The latest wave of generative AI is making medical knowledge more available than ever. OpenAI says health queries are among the most common on ChatGPT. More than a quarter of its 900 million or so weekly users ask at least one such question. In January, both it and Anthropic, a rival, launched health-focused versions of their chatbots that, among other things, explain test results in plain language and identify patterns in data from wearable devices such as smartwatches. Nate Gross, who leads OpenAI's healthcare efforts, says that generative AI offers a big improvement on the old method of scrolling through pages of web search results. Users can now converse with software that considers their symptoms, age, and medical history, and offers tailored answers. The goal, says Dr. Gross, is not to replace human doctors, but to identify worrying patterns that may signal serious illness. Such tools can help patients arrive better prepared for appointments. They can also offer advice when a visit is not possible. Most of ChatGPT's health queries occur outside clinic hours, notes Dr. Gross, and are often from users who live far from a hospital. All this carries risks. Some doctors worry that unprescribed scans and tests will flag benign conditions and further strain an already stretched system. Liability poses another challenge. Chatbot makers insist that their tools offer guidance rather than diagnoses, but the boundary can blur when patients act on automated advice. And there is plenty of dubious medical information floating around the Internet for models to ingest. Patient safety organizations have recently warned about the potential dangers of chatbots. Even so, regulators for now appear willing to let the experiment run. In January, America's Food and Drug Administration relaxed its rules on some wearable devices. Marty McCary, the regulator's boss, said that his organization needed to start moving at the speed of Silicon Valley. America's healthcare system may not be immune to change for much longer.
Business.
Retail. Gap in the market. How a 1990s fashion darling reinvented itself.
The archives at Gap Inc.'s headquarters in San Francisco are a record of past glory. Campaign shots from the 1990s, taken by star photographers like Annie Leibovitz, show models such as Naomi Campbell and actresses like Demi Moore in the Gap uniform of worn jeans and plain shirts. Lately, the retailer has been trying to get some of that cool back. A campaign last year starring Cat's Eye, a Gen Z girl group, was more music video than ad. Young teens soon began copying the moves on TikTok, a short video app. This marketing blitz is central to the turnaround engineered by Richard Dixon, who took over as chief executive 3 years ago. He inherited a mess. Gap, which also owns Old Navy, Cut Price, Banana Republic, Premium, and Athleta, Athleisure, is one of America's largest clothing companies. But as fast fashion labels such as H&M and Zara grew and e-commerce took off, it became known for fusty stores and uninspiring designs. Sales and profits cratered. Shoppers wondered, why go to Gap? Mr. Dixon seems to have given them an answer. This month, Gap reported its 8th consecutive quarter of growth in same-store sales. Its share price is up by over 125% since he took the helm. Mr. Dixon was previously the second in charge at Mattel, a toy maker, where he oversaw the hit Barbie film and helped revive the brand. He is also applying the same formula at Gap. Brands are stories, declares the boss, who, with long curly hair and a string of beads peeking through his shirt, looks like the type of man who could start a cult. Somewhere along the way, he says, the company lost its storytelling and became a retailer that sold stuff. Gap's story begins in 1960s San Francisco, when Don and Doris Fisher, whose families still own a big stake in the business, opened a store selling Levi's jeans and records. Under Mickey Drexler, who took over as chief executive in 1995, the retailer went global and added new brands. Its market capitalization peaked at $67 billion in 1999. Almost 8 times its value today. From there, it spiralled into irrelevance. Ill-fitting khakis and uninspiring button-downs piled up on discount racks at outlet stores. When a Gap distribution centre burned down in 2016, one analyst called it a blessing in disguise. The stock needed to be cleared somehow. Between Mr. Drexler's departure in 2002 and Mr. Dixon's arrival, Gap cycled through 6 chief executives. Mr. Dixon's plan for Gap involves more than splashy marketing. He has been fixing up its property portfolio, continuing to close some shops but refurbishing others. Footfall at its remaining stores has risen in 5 of the past 6 months, according to Placer.ai, a data provider. Online shoppers, who now account for 40% of sales, up from 30% before the pandemic, are better served too. One of Mr. Dixon's first acts was to strip the brand's homepages of discount banners and pop-ups. There's promotion that's gamification, he says, and then there's promotion that's desperate. AI is being used to manage inventory and speed up delivery. Thanks to automation, some 80% of products now move through Gap warehouses without touching human hands. Those products have also become more appealing. Gap's average selling price, the amount paid after discounts, has ticked up, suggesting shoppers are no longer simply hunting for bargains. The firm has sped up production too, allowing it to quickly jump on fads like super baggy balloon jeans. Rather than ordering stock 9 months in advance of a season, it now buys fabric early while delaying decisions on dyeing and cutting. At Gap's namesake label, collaborations with hip brands like Cult Gaia and Doen have lured in well-heeled customers. It hasn't hurt that youngsters have become obsessed with throwback 1990s fashion and swung from wearing leggings to jeans. The turnaround is far from complete. Gap remains nowhere near as cool as it was in its 1990s heyday. Old Navy faces stiff competition from discounters like Nordstrom Rack. Athleta is struggling most. It never reached the scale of Lululemon, a rival which was founded in the same year but makes 8 times its sales. Both are now losing business to athleisure upstarts such as Vuori and Alo. Still, there are plenty of opportunities for growth. Mr. Dixon has his eyes on higher margin accessories and beauty. UBS, a bank, sees a gap-shaped opening in the market for $25 to $60 handbags. Cheaper than Coach, pricier than H&M. Then there is what Mr. Dixon calls fashiontainment. Old Navy, which is popular with families, has struck deals with Marvel and Formula One that allow the retailer to sell T-shirts and hoodies emblazoned with their logos. But Mr. Dixon has bigger plans in mind. What exactly remains nebulous. In January, he hired a chief entertainment officer from Paramount, a movie maker, and announced the opening of an office on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. For a retailer recovering from a decades-long slump, that could mean reinvention or distraction.
Business.
Bartleby. In praise of grunt work. AI promises to eliminate drudgery. Careful what you wish for.
The list of potential victims of artificial intelligence is long. It includes every business, all software engineers, privacy and humanity itself. But some of its expected effects are more popular than others. Most people can agree, for example, that AI will be doing workers a tremendous favour if it gets rid of grunt work, the sort of tediously repetitive tasks that take up too much of everyone's days. Filling out expense claims, copying and pasting things into spreadsheets, trying to resize one of those stupid boxes in PowerPoint. If people were able to outsource this drudgery to machines, they could devote more attention to higher-value tasks. The case against grunt work is obvious. Healthcare workers spend inordinate amounts of time manually inputting data, time that could be spent actually looking after patients. Automated redaction technology can spare police officers the hours they currently spend stripping personal information from documents and videos. In office after office, the mundane and the routine get in the way of people doing more valuable tasks. Greater productivity would not be the only prize from less drudgery. People do not like being bored out of their skulls and will do whatever they can to liven things up. In one study, people who were shown a tedious film were more likely than watchers of an interesting one to put maggots through what they thought was a coffee grinder. End ennui, maggots matter, is surely a slogan everyone can get behind. Yet there is always another side to the ledger. Reducing drudge work is indeed a noble aim. Getting rid of it entirely is much less sensible. One argument for drudge work is its centrality to entry-level jobs. People who are new to the workforce know very little about the job they are meant to be doing. The same is also true of lots of people at the end of their careers, but that's a different column. Grunt work has long been a way to fill junior employees' time while allowing them to learn the basics of office life. Per photocopier ad astra. If AI takes on all the drudge work that has traditionally fallen to the newbies, employers may simply stop hiring them. The obvious answer to that worry is to get younger employees to do higher-value tasks sooner. Law firms talk of putting juniors in front of clients earlier in their careers, for example. But the goal of filling working days with nothing but higher-order tasks is misconceived, because even experienced workers need a chance to move up and down through the gears. That's partly because of cognitive capacity. It's hard to imagine many jobs where optimal performance matters more than being an air traffic controller. Understimulation is a definite risk. Controllers have been known to combine sectors of airspace into bigger blocks if traffic volumes are too low. But there is also a limit to how long people can concentrate deeply without becoming fatigued, which is why controllers typically work no more than 90 minutes or 2 hours without taking a break. Too much boredom is a bad thing, in other words, but so is too little. Tasks that don't require laser-like focus can also allow creative ideas to incubate. A study by Benjamin Baird of the University of Texas at Austin and his co-authors asked participants to take a standard creativity test in which they had to think of as many novel uses as possible for an ordinary object. A subset of this group was then given an undemanding task to do before taking the test again. Other subsets were given a demanding task, a period of rest, or no break at all. People who were given a task where their minds could wander far outperformed the other groups on the subsequent test. Counterintuitively, grunt work may even be useful for bestowing a sense of agency. People like completing tasks. In a study of emergency room doctors in an American hospital, Diwas KC of Emory University and his co-authors found that physicians would deliberately prioritize easier-to-complete tasks as workloads increased. Much as nobody revels in doing their expenses, they can at least be done. You can press the submit button and feel minutely satisfied until you are told the claim code is wrong. A job comprising too much drudgery is mind-numbing. If AI can make work more stimulating and more productive, then the technology will deserve plaudits. But bosses and employees should not be too quick to wish away every last bit of toil. Puttering has its place.
Business.
Schumpeter. A pedant's paradise. Why corporate lawyers always win.
In place of an aristocracy, observed Alexis de Tocqueville in 1831, America has lawyers. The number of them in politics has been in decline ever since. Instead, it is on Wall Street that pedantry has become truly powerful. Lawyers have ascended, in rank and wealth, above the accountants, consultants, and investment bankers who comprise the rest of the corporate consigliere. Profits per lawyer at the 100 largest law firms have increased by 54% since 2019, according to an industry report by the Thomson Reuters Institute, a research group. Hourly rates rose at more than twice the pace of inflation over the same period. The grandest among the legal aristocracy advise private equity firms from cradle to grave. What is that industry but a great confluence of contracts? First, funds are assembled by lawyers. In a deal, they negotiate everything but the price. If things go well, more fundraising and spending follow, along with billionaires in need of Dickensian family trusts and Trumpian tax treatments. If disaster strikes, the prize can be greater still. Contentious debt restructurings, which tend to postpone rather than avoid bankruptcy, are among the fastest-growing businesses at the top law firms. These are to the legal profession what nose jobs are to the medical one: lucrative, technically impressive, and bleakly superficial. The result is an industry which prints money, whatever the weather, and whose power sits awkwardly with clients that now feel only slightly richer than their servants. Kirkland and Ellis, whose untiring work for private equity has made its partners the industry's highest paid, pocketed nearly $200 million from Blackstone alone during the past 2 years. Last month, one of the law firm's top partners left after his clients sued some of Kirkland's private equity regulars as part of a particularly fiery debt restructuring. Considering their role as architects of the unceasing innovation in corporate governance in America, it is striking how little has changed in the way top law firms are run. Regulation discourages radical changes such as a public listing or a sale to private equity. Change has, at most, been incremental. Many firms have abandoned paying their partners based on tenure alone. Some have created a new rank of salaried partners who are endowed with a lofty title and billing rate, but no real ownership. Defections between firms have become a bit more common, though starting a new one is still mostly unthinkable, even if the best lawyers are no more dependent on their firms than top bankers. 3 of America's 10 leading financial advisory firms for mergers were started this century. None of the most profitable law firms were. Tocqueville might put it down to the conservatism he ascribed to the profession. Yet lawyers have demonstrated an extraordinary moral flexibility of late. Donald Trump has tried to punish the firms which pursued him after his first term as president, and which had gone to great, possibly illegal lengths to increase the racial diversity of their workforces. The few which have not yielded to him have been lauded. The rest, which speedily promised to work pro bono for causes approved by Mr. Trump, are misunderstood by their critics. Big Law's former obsession with DEI was a fickle response to client demands and social pressure, rather than a reflection of any deeper beliefs. It is not difficult to abandon principles you didn't have in the first place. The contrast between the legal profession's commercial success and its unpopularity in the public realm is clearest in Britain. In the city, the business of poring over corporate contracts is one of the country's rare economic triumphs. In Westminster, activist lawyers continually frustrate government policy in areas from immigration to planning. He spent his life subverting Britain's interests. Robert Jenrick, an MP, said recently of the Attorney General, a former human rights barrister. Before becoming a politician, and long before defecting to the populist Reform UK party, Mr. Jenrick worked for Skadden and Sullivan and Cromwell, 2 top American law firms. Populism demands that the political clout of lawyers will fall even lower. But those hoping artificial intelligence will end the profession's dominance in commerce as well should not hold their breath. True, the information that lawyers marshal is both vast and often formulaic. Many of their tasks are conducted over email and in Word documents, and they play less golf than bankers. Yet many in the profession are happily using AI to speed up their work. And for a technology widely predicted to put them out of a job, it is so far creating a good deal of work for lawyers. The novel financing structures that are enabling model makers enormous investments require reams of paperwork. Then there are the lawsuits. Anthropic, whose boss has predicted that its AI tools will soon replace junior lawyers, is keeping plenty of them busy by suing America's government for declaring the firm a supply chain risk. OpenAI, Anthropic's arch-rival, is being sued by Elon Musk for shedding its non-profit structure. The New York Times over alleged copyright infringement, and families of users who committed suicide after using its chatbot. For good measure, it has also been accused in Illinois of practicing law without a license. The firm denies wrongdoing in all instances, presumably having consulted with its lawyers. In the last of these cases, a former employee of Nippon Life recently lobbed dozens of complaints at the insurer that were allegedly generated by AI, costing it $300,000, which it hopes to recover from OpenAI. With a cursory knowledge of the law now available to anyone who can converse with a chatbot, businesses may soon find themselves inundated with lawsuits. To defend themselves, they will still need to hire the professionals. Courts will remain slow. Again, it seems, the lawyers will win.
Business. Take cover. In Trump's world, companies seek insurance against political risk. It could soon get more expensive. Like everyone else, corporate bosses are asking, what in the world will happen next? In the past few weeks, President Donald Trump has begun a war against Iran that has engulfed much of the Middle East, including boomtowns in the Gulf, and ordered a lightning raid to capture Venezuela's dictator. It's not just Mr. Trump. Russia's war in Ukraine and China's saber-rattling in the Taiwan Strait had already unnerved businesses. No wonder more of them are seeking protection. Political risk insurance, PRI, covers losses caused by acts such as expropriation, political violence, currency inconvertibility, or the sudden cancellation of a contract. Such policies have long been a niche of the global $8 trillion insurance market, typically used to protect investments in poor countries, and often associated with development projects. But the business is expanding. Managing risk is at the forefront of everyone's mind, says Kate Muir-Jones, who oversees political risk at Marsh, an insurance broker. In a recent survey by Howden, another broker, just over half of respondents, 496 Western firms with revenues of more than $1 billion, suffered some form of political loss between 2020 and 2025. PRI protection is bespoke. A commodity trader might want to protect a few cocoa warehouses in a coup-prone country. A technology firm might want cover for a data center in a place where energy is cheap, but politics are rocky. Policy terms are often confidential. A site known to be well insured could become a target. According to Howden, PRI reduces the cost of capital in emerging market projects from 15% to about 11%, saving roughly $2 million a year on the average investment. It can save far more when things go badly wrong. About 6% of the firms surveyed by the broker suffered losses of more than $100 million. Therein lies an opportunity for insurers. For years, PRI was dominated by public insurers such as the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, part of the World Bank, and national export credit agencies such as America's International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, or China's Sinosure. In recent days, Mr. Trump has ordered the DFC to provide PRI to ships carrying oil and gas in the choked-off Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway off the southern coast of Iran. But private insurers have spied gaps in coverage. They now write about 18% of new PRI policies, according to the Bern Union, an industry group, up from 10% 5 years ago. The maximum coverage they are willing to offer has risen to $4 billion, higher than their public peers and on more flexible terms. As demand and supply have increased, so has PRI's scope. With their ability to back bigger projects, insurers are writing PRI policies for a wider range of industries. Data centers and renewable energy have quickly become big areas of focus. More policies are being written for developed markets too. Insurers increasingly offer comprehensive cover that bundles PRI with credit insurance, which protects against non-payment. Falling insurance rates have helped growth. According to Marsh's Global Insurance Market Index, commercial insurance rates fell by 4% year-on-year in the final quarter of 2025, the sixth consecutive quarterly decline. Rates have been pushed down by increased competition and growth in the supply of reinsurance, insurance for insurers. All that is comforting, but insurers will cover only so much. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, they began looking more closely at their methodology, policy wording, and concentration risk, exposure to groups of countries that are individually low risk, but collectively vulnerable to a single event, such as the Gulf states. PRI may be more necessary than ever, but that is likely to make it pricier. To track the trends shaping commerce, industry, and technology, sign up to The Bottom Line, our weekly subscriber-only newsletter on global business.